Hello, everybody. We are 1 minute out, and today is November 12th. This is November's guest presenter. The amazing, talented, incredibly gifted Kelli Reese will be joining us here in just a minute. So if you guys are listening to the recording or if you are hopping on, say hello, get yourself a glass of water, cheers, and a cup of tea. And we will start here in just about 45 seconds. All right, you guys. Make sure Kelli is all set to hop on. I just spoke with Kelli a minute ago. Here's the link again if you need it. Okay. So as we get going, you guys, Kelli is going to talk to us about, I'm just making sure I didn't cross our times. Kelli is, oh, hey, Virginia. I didn't see you there. Kelli should be hopping on any minute. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm going to read her bio as we are waiting. I'm so excited you're here, Kelli, and everyone, Virginia, anyone that is listening to the recording. This is going to be an awesome, awesome call. So let me just tell you a little bit about Kelli while she hops on. So Kelli is an Amazon bestselling author of 2 books, The Destiny Roadmap, The Little Guidebook to Face Your Fears, Embrace Change, and Follow Your Heart, and The Relationship Roadmap, the spiritual guidebook to ditch the uncertainty and find clarity in your relationship. Kelli is a former CEO of a $34 million organization. 4 years ago, she walked away from a 17-year career to align her work with the spiritual path she'd been on for years. She's a certified leadership and relationship coach who provides female leaders with powerful tools to show up fully in work, relationships, and life. Hey, Kelli, welcome. I'm just telling everyone about you. We knew you were hopping on.
Thank you.
So welcome, and this is Kelli, everyone. Kelli combines years of experience in business and leadership with decades of personal growth and development. Her expertise is helping clients connect to their power and purpose to understand their truth. We were talking about that today in alignment. So they can stop second guessing themselves, trust their inner guidance, and claim the aligned life they were craving. Dee, you are perfectly timed. Kelli lives in Ojai, California. Congratulations, she just moved there, where she works with her clients from all over the world through one-on-one coaching, life-changing programs, in-person retreats, and private profile sessions. Some places she's been featured include Fierce CEO, Mind Body Green, Bustle International Living, Self, Best Life, CB Nation, and numerous podcasts and radios. You can find her at kellireese.com or Instagram at Kelli Reese. I'll type those in the comments. Thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Happy to see you.
I know, I'm happy to see you too.
And you guys, so Kelli, oh, hi Lisa, I'm so happy you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You guys, Kelli, I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about this, but she just moved from Tulum, Mexico, up to Ojai, California, which is my cousin's old stomping grounds. I've spent some time in Ojai in my high school years.
It's pretty nice. It's beautiful here.
Yeah, yeah. And Kelli is, as I told you guys, she is amazingly gifted at helping people in relationships of all different sorts. And what we're going to talk a lot about today is relationship with ourselves and how to cultivate that. What does it mean? I feel like self-love kind of is thrown around, like, what does that even mean, right? And I remember one time when one time I remember, Kelli, I was talking about it in a Facebook post, this was years ago, and so one of my best friends was like, okay, I get it. Like you want to have self-care, but don't you think you're being a bit egotistical? And it was one of my very best friends. Like he did not mean it harshly. And it was a guy too. It was a dude, which was even more interesting.
Wow.
And it was just so fascinating to me because he did not mean it harshly. But like, there's a lot of different perspectives around self-love.
Yeah. It used to really, honestly piss me off because I couldn't figure out what the hell it meant. So when people would say the relationship with self is the most important relationship you'll ever have, I was like, screw you. You just don't know. Like it confused the hell out of me. And I really didn't understand like what it meant. Like, was it getting a massage? Was it, a mani-pedi? It's like, no. Yes, that self-care, I think of the concept of the relationship with self as being very different from self-care.
Yeah.
It's rolled in for sure, but it's not the primary focus.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you my story, but I have to just pause for it's such a random comment. But Lisa, do you see the cow behind Kelli? Lisa loves photos of cows, and this is gorgeous painting you have. So random, I know, but just had to.
I looked up what the bull meant, and I was like, oh, it's all about transformation. And I was like, you can stay.
Yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. It's so gorgeous. Okay, so Kelli, let's talk about your journey. Like you've had so many journeys. I feel like you and I have had so many different journeys. But let's talk about your journey to self-love and how did you discover what that meant and what is your definition of it, right? So let's give a little context so that we can dive into this a little more.
Okay. Well, my journey, as everybody's is normally, was not about like running through a field of flowers with rainbows and bunnies everywhere, on a beautiful sunny morning. It was filled with lots of tripping and lots of falling down and picking myself back up again and frustration and tears. And in between, the like amazing parts got longer and longer. And in the parts between the like falling down, I was like gaining some understanding about how I showed up in my relationships and in my life. And I couldn't, for the longest time, it was hard for me to bring together the idea of how I wanted to show up with the actuality of how I was showing up. So I spent a lot of time getting really angry at myself for the times when I would yell or act out or be upset or not in this like perfect image of what I thought like, the spiritual woman or the aware woman did. And I had to learn how to accept all those parts of myself and understand that I was the person responsible for loving me through all of this like rough stuff and all the good and the bad. It all came as a whole piece. like there isn't just a part of me, like I don't get all the good pieces. There's lots of good.
We can't
but
pick
there's
and
some you can't pick and choose and say like this part okay on my good days, yay. On my bad days, and the bad days are really few and far between now, which is wonderful, but there's this idea of in the spiritual world, and I have my own, this is a whole nother conversation of what it means to be a spiritual woman in this world, but there's this idea that and women just in general have this of trying to do everything right, and we spend a lot of time ruminating in our minds, and that can get incredibly exhausting, but that is part of who I am, and I had to even learn how to accept that before acceptance is like the first piece. I had to accept it so then I could change something or do something about it. I'm not 100% excellent at managing my mind 24/7. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on up there. So, but I'm really good at spotting my fears and seeing. It's like I say, I can spot it on a grain of sand. It's like I see it, I know what you're doing, coming after you. So there's this idea that at some point we're going to get out of our head. We're going to stop all these thoughts. It's going to be different. And it's better. I spot it and I don't let it take over. But the stronger I get, the stronger my mind gets about tossing the fears at me, tossing like coming back at me and saying like, hey, okay, you're stronger, but we are too, here's your fears. Here's all the things that my mind knows can trip me up. And that's the self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So understanding the intricacy of me and accepting all those parts of me, and then doing what I can about shifting when I'm not where I feel like I want to be. So I have to be really aware of my emotions, of managing my emotional state, my mind, but in a way that I'm not pushing. So it's like this incredible balance.
I was gonna say.
And as you start pushing, you're coming from a place of fear. So it's like this tricky balance that I had to figure out for myself, of fully being grounded in myself, because I spent a lot of time escaping.
Which I think so many of us do, right? The escape piece, and you would like, you said self-sabotage as like this casual thing, but like really that's such a huge piece of so many of our lives. Mm-hmm. Self-sabotage is everywhere, it feels like, at least in my life. I will own that.
Yeah.
And so
no, it's in my life too, but I can spot it. I go after it. I'm like, no.
So how do we spot this? Like, how do we begin, like, to give some contextual ideas? Like, I think if you've been doing this work for a long time, it's maybe quote unquote easier to spot, like probably. Mm-hmm. But when we're just starting out for this work, or when we're just beginning, like, how do we even have the awareness to see what's going on? And then to have the courage to call ourselves out. Like, that's a big thing. I think last week I experienced something where I was like, oh my gosh, I am seeing a truth that I have wanted to deny for a very long time. And so I did, and I didn't think it existed because I denied it. So like, how do we begin, right? If we're at this starting point, just to give a little bit of context, because you're giving this great information, but like, how do we, to bring it in a very like kind of example or story kind of emphasis, how would we do that? Does that make sense?
Good question. Yeah, it totally does. The thing that worked for me is that once I realized that once I realized there was a way that I wanted to show up, and I kept missing that piece, I was like, why?
Right.
why does it keep going? Like, I know what I want to say, what I want to do, and I keep doing the same thing again and again, which is insanity. It's definition of insanity. So, and it was so frustrating because I could see, like, if I do this, I'm going to get this outcome. And so I really had to buckle down and say, like, this is how I want to show up. And I'm specifically talking about my 15-year relationship with my ex-husband. Mm-hmm. It was the training ground for me to really get out of the habits, because they're just habits. And that's what happens, is we fall into this habitual patterns and like how we react to things. And often we wish the other person would change, and really it's about us. And when I work with clients, they're amazed that, you know, they shift and everything in their relationship shifts. They can't understand in the beginning how, if they do this work, that everything will shift around them. But the more that they get further into it and do the work, then they see, oh my God, it's way easier than we want to make it, for one thing. But noticing that there's something, as you said, within you that you can shift, and knowing what that is really important. And so for me, I would became the observer. And without judgment, I started observing myself in these situations where I was like, dang, this is not how I wanted to do it. You know, oh, here we are having that same conversation about finances, and I'm lashing out or doing the same things that I always do. And guess what? I got the exact same outcome that I totally get.
Yeah.
So I observed myself through this process. And then I said, okay, so if I can shift, I could see where I could shift the conversation and actually like turn it to a different direction, not go down the same path. So then I would see myself get to that part in the conversation, because we had this conversation a lot, and I would go down the same path, like, okay, so without judgment, I'd come back. And there was finally a time where I was like, okay, right here, and I planned it ahead of time, this is where I can make it different. I can choose a different way to go. And so I planned for myself that I was going to be more curious about where he was coming from and ask more questions. And so as soon as I got this like piece of curiosity about like, let's understand more where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I softened. And as I softened, he softened, and it allowed this conversation to happen that we had never had before. Then I started seeing the power behind just observing and seeing where I can shift, and then changing it to a compassionate conversation where instead we were like this all the time, where nothing comes out of that, you know. You do just the same thing over and over again, which is so frustrating. So being the observer and then being really curious about the other person and coming from a place of compassion, those are the three things that work really well when you want to shift something within yourself. You can't change the other person.
I love that so much. And it is amazing. We always talk about like what be the change we wish to see in the world. My favorite quote in the entire world, right? Like be the change we wish to see in our family. When we show up to do the work, everyone else shifts around it. And it doesn't matter what kind of work you're showing up to do. When you show up to do eat clean, change your diet, do like work on your, like whatever, there are shifts that take place around you. So what you're sharing with me when you talk about this curiosity component, I love that so much, because our defense mechanism comes down a little bit, right? We're like, oh, you actually care. Like you want to hear me, and the other person feels heard. What a novelty, right? So I have shared, and I'll share this with you. We've talked about self-care or self-love from my perspective. And I always say the way I got to the point I'm at, which has much more still to go, but is curiosity with myself. But I'm curious how, like when we move into this place of self-love, right? How did you get from, okay, you're observing the situation and you're seeing how you can, by shifting your own energy, your own thoughts, being curious, right? You're able to experience a desired outcome that's different than the same outcome you've been getting over and over. How do you go from that to then finding this place of self-love? Because it's one thing to be like, oh, I'm having a different dynamic in my relationship, but that doesn't automatically jump us to self-love. So what was your trajectory? How did you get to that point?
Yeah. So that's an awesome question. Because it sounds like a lot of work just to get where I was, right?
Yeah.
But it happened fast, because it wasn't just the financial conversation. We had a lot of conversations that we had again and again and again. So I used all of them as a little tool for myself to like see where I was contributing to the dysfunction of the relationship. And that's not to say that we had lots of amazing times and conversations together. These are just the times that I used to, figure my stuff out. So when I wasn't doing this thing and we kept having the same conversation over and over again, it was like banging my head against the wall. I kept showing up in a way that I didn't want to show up. I kept getting the outcome I wasn't wanting, and I kept wanting him to be different. When I let go and I just said, okay, I need to do something differently, I softened and relaxed into myself in a way that I allowed myself to come out and blossom. It sounds kind of, strange, but it's true. I softened in a way that I opened up, and then that allowed him to open up. And so, which allowed me to see a different part of myself that I hadn't realized was there. And so that was a process of like getting to know this other part, because I spent so much time thinking he should be different, he should change. Right. This is a problem. You know, I had all these ideas about what I actually thought the problem in our relationship was. And there were challenges. We'd still be married if we'd still be together if there weren't, you know, but we were able to have these incredible conversations afterwards. After I started becoming curious about like, well, where is he? Is he even in this relationship? Does he want to be in this relationship? Like, I asked the questions that I had always been afraid to ask him. And when it finally came down to I'm getting to how I brought it around. When it finally came down to having the conversation about, you know, here's what I need. I got really clear on what I needed. And I listed them out in a conversation where I just said, I'm really worried about us, and here's what I need. And he said, I'm fearful that I can't give that to you. And I said, well, maybe that's just like fear that you're supposed to, you know, walk through. And he was like, maybe, but I'm not going to ever meditate with you or do yoga or have a, you know, that spiritual life that you live. And I just, it was like he, I felt myself like exhale, and it was like this exhale I felt like I've been holding forever. So I was just like, it was like this incredible release. And he was like, you know, I just want you to be happy. And if that doesn't mean with me, that's okay. And I was like, well, I want you to be happy. And I keep trying to change you into someone that you're not. And so we had this realization. And it was the first time we had this conversation before about like, we're in a sexless marriage, you know, we had whatever, I named all the things. It wasn't the first time we had the conversation. It was the first time I said that it mattered. And that's when I realized I chose me. And that gave me this like deeper understanding of what it actually meant to say, like, have the difficult conversations and say what needed to be said. And even when it was uncomfortable or scary, and it was freaking scary for me to, you know, say those things to him, because he was my safety net. He was like, you know, he's still one of my best friends. We still go on vacation with our friends, and that confuses everybody. Like, how is this possible? But yeah, so that's a whole nother call. But it's because I started to choose me that I understood what the relationship with self really meant. I stopped. I started having the conversations that needed to be had, and I started listening to what my needs truly were, in a way that I never had before. But I had to soften in order to do that, because I spent a lot of years in my career before I walked away, pushing and driving forward and working my ass off, thinking that was how I was going to get to the top. And then my body said,
right. No,
you're at the top and you're freaking exhausted.
Yeah. This doesn't work. Well, it sounds like you said it was when I started choosing me that I began to learn what self-love was. I think that's what you just said. I think that was the quote that you said. And the way you began to choose you got super clear on what you needed, right? You're like, this is what I need. And instead of avoiding sharing that, you made a choice, a conscious choice, to take action and to share your thoughts that aligned with that specific outcome of what you need, right? And it's the reason I'm saying this is because I always talk about alignment, and the vocabulary. I say, what is your desired outcome? And it could be different for different situations. And are your actions and your thoughts supporting that? Which it sounds like in different words, but that's exactly what you were doing. You were getting in alignment with yourself.
Yes. And if you're not, that's in like my bio that you said, to know your truth. Yeah. That's the piece of knowing your truth.
Exactly.
And when you can know your truth at the level that you have your back, you don't require anyone else to have your back. You don't require anyone else to fulfill these needs that you think that they're there to fulfill. For the longest time, I was actually expecting my partner to to fill this hole that I had for the longest time. And that wasn't his responsibility to fill that hole at all. Zero responsibility.
And I think
when he didn't, I was pissed.
Right.
Like, you're not filling my hole.
Right. And I think we fill our holes in different ways. It can be our significant other. It can be food. It can be addiction. It can be, just blanking out and watching Netflix, all of those things, right? All of these different aspects.
Yeah.
So
I was so good at that too. In my teenage years, I actually ended up in AA because I was a heavy drinker. And then what I realized after 3 years of being in AA, I was like, I'm not an alcoholic. Oh my God. And then I realized I'm not addicted to alcohol. I'm addicted to escape. And alcohol is just one way I chose to escape. So.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. What a great epiphany, and so much value to be able to see that. Okay. So, I have 2 questions before because I know you're about to like bridge even more, like, okay, this is how I figured out what self-love was. Is it me showing up for myself, right? Me supporting myself. That was like the discovery of self-love. And I want to hear like, okay, what happens next? But before we get to that, how did you get clarity on what you needed? Because I think that can be difficult.
Yeah. And the thing that gets in the way is fear. It's like, there's a little bit of fear that comes up, especially for my clients, in getting to know themselves, which I find so interesting because fear tries to convince you. It's like getting to know yourself is the unknown, right?
Exactly.
And you know, I love the unknown. So
yeah.
And so anytime you enter the unknown, whether it's a new job, it's a new home, it's something is new, and it's new getting to know yourself, your fear is going to kick in and tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of managing that in order to understand. You have to be willing to go in. Nothing that is, you're not going to find yourself out there. You know, it takes that exploration of the inner world. And it can happen through writing, through art, through that kind of thing. I'm not saying that, but that's coming from the inside, right? So for me, I had to get really quiet. I had to hear what the noise was, as well as what it felt like in between the gap of the noise and me as a human walking around on this planet, right? Yeah. So there was like this space there, these moments of like clarity and peace that I have found through mostly meditation, and some with journaling and writing. You know, when I wrote my second book, The Relationship Roadmap, I realized how much I had understood about myself and how I show up in relationships, just through that process of writing. But when you write, you go in in order to write from your heart, and so it really, the process is about getting out of your head. And my clients will say, well, if I'm not in my head, where am I? I'm like, you're in your heart. And that feels like a really vulnerable place to be. And so we work a lot on getting out of the idea that vulnerability is an enemy, or that change is an enemy, because a lot of times they're afraid to say what needs to be said, because then things might change. Yeah. Like you might end up moving to Tulum for 2 years and walking away from everything.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what you're sharing. One of the biggest pieces that is, it's so obvious and simple, but requires like us to make a very conscious choice in order to get clear on what we want. We have to slow down and we have to create space, right? We have to, we have to get quiet. And how many of us really are that quiet during the day? Like, it is a conscious, for me, it requires a very conscious effort to say, I'm taking this time to journal, to meditate, to pray, to whatever, and getting really quiet. Right. And it's not like one time and you're done kind of thing either. Like it requires consistency.
Oh no, I have I can maybe go maybe 3 days without meditating before I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah. Right. Right.
It's like, oh, I haven't been meditating.
Yeah.
So I've learned.
So we have to create that space. And if we do nothing else, like we can't move forward without creating that space to get the clarity, to see what we need. Like that is such a basic foundational block that if we skip over,
100%,
we can't climb up the ladder.
Right.
Okay. So let's say we're clear on what we need. And now we have this awareness, and to put it out there and say what we need can feel really scary and vulnerable sometimes, because we're seeing this truth and don't know how that will lead to the unknown. But we do it, right? We put it out there. We either, whether we're putting it out there just with ourselves or with others, like we're taking action, we're getting into alignment. Now we're seeing a glimpse of, oh, this is self-love. This is like being in alignment with your highest self, with your truth, like you say, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we continue to support that relationship? What does that look like? How can we nurture our relationship? Because I can say I have been in that position, and I feel like there's so many layers to self-love. I could be wrong, but I feel like I have come out of like deep, dark holes and been like, oh, I'm in alignment and I see it. But then I'll go sometime and it's like, oh, I actually am not in alignment in this. I didn't see it, right? And so you see it, but then you're like, oh, does that mean I wasn't in self-love? Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us more about self-love.
So the relationship with self it's like any other relationship. It's, sometimes I'll say, take yourself out to coffee and get to know yourself. Yeah. Because you can't just dive in. That's like trying to say, oh, hey, I just met you and we're going to have this incredible relationship together. I mean, that can happen for sure. And there's people that happens with, but you build trust over time, you build an understanding. And so that is what you do with yourself as well. The more that you say what needs to be said, the more that you have respect for yourself, the more that you have your own back, the more trust you have in yourself. Mm-hmm. But the missing, that other link to that is acting on your own internal guidance. Trusting yourself at the level that you don't question what you know. That's when you can say, oh my God, I took this action, and like you're talking about, and it was aligned. When you can trust yourself at the level of all those things, having your own back, but also adding in the piece of the connection to your own inner knowing, that's like the pillar right there. It's like, that's how you can ground yourself into your body, and you stop allowing yourself to escape. Right. And that's not to say that you don't have a glass of wine, that kind of thing. I'm talking about like, women are really amazing at just leaving. We check out. I don't like this conversation. I'm out. Oh, this is making me uncomfortable. I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm out. I'll be back when all this discomfort passes. And that's something that we have to get really conscious about. Where is my energy right now? Is it all splaying out all over the room? Because that's exhausting, and you don't feel, you're not in your center, you're not in your power and grounded when that's happening. So when you can pull yourself back and you can actually be grounded and centered in your body, you can make decisions from a place of like awareness, it's like, oh, I can do this. Like, you can see what's possible, rather than when you're off somewhere, checked out. Right. And so I wanted to say one thing too about resistance, because a lot of times it can feel like it is resistance or resistance to doing any of the work, being vulnerable, sitting in meditation, even if it's 10 minutes a day, having the difficult conversations. We work too hard. It's just all these things where, but then there's this other piece where it's like, we should be spending more time with our partner, with the kids. We should be working out. We should be the perfect mom, the perfect wife, everything. Yeah. It's just like, it's exhausting. So no wonder we're checking out, right? Yeah. Because it just feels overwhelming. But If you feel resistance to any of the things that you and I are talking about, like I'm talking to anyone who's on this call or listening later on, if you feel resistance, fear is resistance. Resistance is really fear in disguise. So ask yourself, how do I believe this resistance is serving me? That's like the first thing that I usually go to is like, okay, I feel this resistance. Why am I hesitating? Why don't I want to go forward? And then that's where you can check in, knowing yourself and knowing that you're even feeling some things off, right? When we ignore that off feeling far too much, we push it down and say, that'll go away. I'll get to that later. Then you never do. It just piles up, right? So when you feel the resistance, the key is to be in that moment, not in the past, not in the future. Be in that moment and say, okay, what is this? How is this serving me? Is it serving me? But know that it's just fear in disguise. So you need to get in your heart and figure out for yourself, okay, is this something that's serving me? No. And believe that. It's like the first thing you get, and this is why the intuition piece, the inner knowing piece is really important, because information comes in to you really fast from source. It's so quick. Your mind isn't that fast, but then your mind 2 seconds, not even like a millisecond later, will be like, yes, it's fine, and trying to convince you of other things. So how the information comes in, it's trust what you get. That first thing, okay, I'm checking in with the resistance. Is it serving me? No. Okay. And then your mind like, no, you should be doing laundry. You should be making dinner. It's trying to get in the way. But you're getting quiet with yourself and understanding like, what is this? And then you can start to understand like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I really want to move this out, that kind of thing. That is also the relationship with self, listening to those times when your insides are saying, something's wrong. Intuition is part of the feminine energy, right? And a lot of times we're driving forward, pushing forward, doing like organizing everything, and we're much more comfortable in our masculine energy. So the feminine energy is that intuitive side, the softer side, the relaxing into the journey rather than pushing, right? And so that's one of the tools that I also use, is identifying the resistance.
I love that. And when we are resisting, or when we're feeling that discomfort, right, then it tells us we're in resistance, which really is kind of telling us we're out of alignment in some place, which cues us, create some space, get quiet, see what's going on. Awesome. I love it. Okay. I do want to open this up for Q&A, but before I do that, Kelli, is there anything else you want to add to this? I feel like I have our talking points. We didn't go in the order, but I'm just looking over them to see if there's anything else. Is there anything else that, I think in terms of there's self-love shows up in so many different areas of our life. It shows up in our mental, emotional, it shows up in our physical sense. It shows up when we are trying to accomplish things in all different aspects of our life, whether it's health or career or relationships or whatever it may be, right? And what you're sharing here is self-love is the constant. Like there may be all these other aspects of things going on, but it's coming back to self-love, back to our alignment, back to what is my truth, the center, and making sure, okay, my thoughts and my actions are supporting that truth. That's the self-love piece. That is the steady, continuous pillar while all this other craziness is going around.
Right. To me, that the relationship with self is how I become the eye of the storm. So all this stuff can be swirling around me, and I'm like, no, I'm totally grounded. I'm completely centered. That's where my confidence comes from. When I'm escaping and I'm out, and I'm so good at that, just checking out. When I'm in, I know it. And you just have to get really good at knowing when you're out and when you're in. And And also knowing when you're stuck in your head, because you can drop into your heart, and that's where you can listen from, rather than listening to the noise up here. Every answer you could ever need is in your heart. It's the connection to your soul. It's not up here. This is like, dangerous neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so what I always tell clients is start by giving yourself permission to trust what you already know. Literally say out loud, I give myself permission to trust what I intuitively know. I give myself permission to trust myself. Stick it like on the bathroom mirror so you can see, put it on your fridge.
I'm typing it in the chat box. Awesome.
It's huge. Trusting yourself is a big piece of the relationship with self. You can't have a relationship without trust.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly going against what you know internally, then where is your trust?
Yeah. 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 That's so good. And it is in trusting that we are showing self-love. It is in respecting that alignment that we are showing self-love. It's not like that is self-love. I'm having a little bit of an aha with you right now, because it's not just this.
Yay!
Yeah, I know, right? It's not just this like saying I love myself, or it's not this like butterfly and Valentine's type situation going on. It's the verb. It's loving, right? We are loving by staying in alignment, honoring our highest truth, taking the action, having the thoughts. It's that continuous coming back to self that really is what allows ourselves to heal. And so what have you seen in terms of healing? Like, how do you see this transform people's lives when they are coming back, slowing down, seeing their highest truth, coming back to their highest truth, and taking action, thinking those thoughts when they're in alignment with that? Tell us just really quickly some of the stories that you have experienced with people in terms of healing different aspects of their life. Like, what can this do for a person?
So there's been a lot of incredible outcomes for my clients. All of my clients, interestingly enough, had or have some form of mild to debilitating anxiety, performance anxiety especially. They're all entrepreneurs or executives, and they have to they either have to show up in some way, shape, or form in front of a team or on social media, and they're hiding or they're freaking out and having anxiety about it. So we've completely healed the anxiety, gone. Awesome. A lot of them walk away from stagnant relationships, or they heal the relationship they're in, and after like 30 years, they're convinced for sure, this is not the person I'm meant to be with, and then they're madly in love again. And he didn't do a thing to change.
Because you can't love others until you love yourself. I mean, fully, right? Like that dynamic shifts so much when you.
Yeah, you have to understand what love even means. I spent so much time, and all of my clients have this as well. We've got like shields and protections built up, and they're not serving us anymore. And so we work on getting those protections and shields gone. And then I also, because I'm intuitive, as you know, yes. We work on also to removing stuck emotions, which has been a game changer. Because there's emotions. What I discovered is that there's emotions that are stuck, and they are causing issues. They have nothing to do with what's happening right now. So when we get triggered by something that our partner does, 9 times out of 10, it has nothing really to do with that partner. They've triggered some memory or something that we go back to. And so with my clients, we go back, we remove that without any suffering whatsoever. I can take them to what emotions they are, and to the year, how old they were. And then they get the experience. It comes right in. It's pretty amazing. And then we clear it. And that's one thing, how the anxiety gets cleared, but it's pretty remarkable. And, they show up differently in their lives. They go after jobs that had seemed totally out of reach, and they get them. We get through their financial fears, money worries, a lot of money stuff for sure. It's pretty incredible. And
what about healing? Do you have clients who have had health conditions that Like, do you have any stories around that?
The anxiety for sure, they've been healed from that. I do have clients who they show up with like, I've had this chronic thing in my neck for 10 years and that goes away. Yes, there's emotion, because when the emotions get stuck, it also creates dis-ease. And once we clear those things out, and stuff starts to disappear. It's pretty incredible.
Well, and it also seems to me that when we are, especially just relating to my own experience, when we're out of alignment, when we're not creating self-love, then there is the constant shoulds, there's the constant judgment, there's the constant resistance, which creates constant stress, and that makes us sick. Stress makes us sick.
Yes.
So I was just curious, because I feel like that is a piece that needs to be, I want to share that piece with as many people as we can in the world of healing physical ailments. I think they're really strongly connected.
Yes, they are, definitely.
Yeah.
Even for myself, and the people that I end up working with, and this, it's like, oh yes, I had this, or you can reach your hand back and say, come on. So I wasn't surprised when my clients had this, I kept seeing this anxiety piece, it's like, oh, look they keep showing up with this anxiety. And it was like, but and that's actually one of the easier things that goes. What's harder is like the financial stuff, or the things that just, they're so habitual in there that, there's layers. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, Virginia, you have been amazing. Virginia is this girl. She will take action. This woman is incredible. Virginia, I'm so excited you're here. And I want to open this up to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you. I just got home, so I was driving during some of it. So I need to definitely go back and listen to the replay for some of the details. But I really liked what you were saying at the beginning about the building the relationship, framing what other people think, because especially right now I'm having a tough time with my 5-year-old son, and I do check out when my husband gets home, and he's been rough, and I just am like, I'm going in the other room, like I actually physically check out, not just like mentally, like I'm like, so I think that reframing it, my husband is a lot more patient. And I noticed Jenny mentioned you had 2 books. Is one of them more along the helpful lines with that kind of relationship building work?
My second book, The Relationship Roadmap, is written about...
Outside, it's snowing.
No, I can't. Oh my God, it's snowing. It's written about the relationship that I had with my husband, but the tools are transferable to everything.
Okay, great. Then I will definitely check that out for more in-depth. But yeah, I've loved everything you said. I just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, like I said, I was driving during some of it in the snow, so I wasn't paying 100% attention. But what I
won't tell you how warm it is here.
Virginia, I put the name of that book, The Relationship Roadmap, in the chats box, so you can just refer to it there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
check
awesome.
that out on Amazon soon.
So good. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. How can people find you? Where are people in your community? How can they reach out to you if they have more questions?
My website is Kelli Reese, kellywithan.com. And I'm on Facebook, and my email, they can join my email list on the front page of my website. That's probably the easiest.
Perfect. Awesome.
And then I'm on Instagram, kelly.reese.
So hard.
And I think too, if you're open to it, I'd love to provide, you mentioned the higher self. We didn't talk about that at all, but really part of that relationship with self is knowing who you are, really, not just this form that's here. We are a soul walking around in this. And so I have a Meet Your Higher Self meditation that's really beautiful, and I'd love to provide that for you.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I can send you the link to that. So anybody who is listening and wants to understand themselves at a deeper level, which I think is the first piece of all of it, I'll provide that link for you.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you.
And if anyone that's listening, we will share that in the Facebook group and also put it in the Kajabi Student Center of week 9 so that you can watch this video and get that link at the same time. So awesome. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I have loved having you on. I have had some definite ahas. So thank you. I feel like I bring in all the people that I love listening to and talking to so that I can keep learning too. So I appreciate that. And
thanks, Jenny.
It's such
so
an
good to see you.
I know. It's so good to see you. You guys should totally follow Kelli on Facebook or Instagram. She has the most incredible writings, and she really does share with you her very vulnerable, very transparent journey of when you said you're like, you didn't say you're the queen of leaning into unknowns, but I will call you the queen of leaning into unknowns. Like, you're really good at doing that. And I think the fear of unknown is huge in our lives. So just following Kelli and watching how she is in alignment with that, how she really applies that in her life is so inspiring. And it gives us permission to be able to do it too and not think that our world's going to fall apart. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Yeah, and actually so many people have asked me like, what do you do? I wish I could do this. And so I'm actually working on something for 2020 that helps people do that.
That's so awesome.
I think it's the way that we're headed. We've got to stop pushing. We've got to stop trying to control every aspect of our lives and every minute detail. It's just exhausting people.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you, Kelli. It's so
welcome.
So good to see you, Virginia. Thank you for being on.
Virginia.
And Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa, who was here.
And everyone else that's listening, thank you. We love you guys and have a beautiful day.
Bye.
Bye.